Thank you. Minister, I want to inquire, what are your plans to improve the working conditions for PhD students? PhD researchers need to have their work recognised. They deserve rights and conditions that reflect the contribution they make to education and research. The recently published General Scheme of the Higher Education Authority Bill contains no mention or role of the reformed HEA to promote better conditions for early career researchers.
I don't think that's an oversight. I think it's more that the bill relates specifically to how the Higher Education Authority will interact with the institutions, but very happy to look at that with you through pre-legislative scrutiny, Deputy Conway-Walsh. Postgraduate programmes are comprised of a range of elements designed to further the training and development of students. In particular, PhD students, in addition to conducting research, do participate in other activities, including teaching, to develop generic and transferable skills. A range of activities can be included under the teaching contribution, such as taking tutorial groups, demonstrating at practical classes, co-supervising undergraduate projects, and student mentoring. Officials from my department and the HEA, at my request, have now been collecting information from all of the higher education institutions on these practices, because you've raised this with me before, as well as information from a number of research funding agencies on any terms and conditions they specify when allocating grants to PhD students. The Higher Education Authority and Quality Qualifications Ireland co-chair the National Advisory Forum for Ireland's Framework for Doctoral Education. Membership of the forum also comprises representatives of the higher education institutions, research funding organisations, representatives of the university and technological sector, student representatives, and my department. Examination of relevant issues raised in relation to PhD students arising from the information obtained and current practices will be undertaken by a group of that advisory forum. So we're collating the information, we're asking the advisory forum to consider it, including, and we're specifically asking them to look at what happens in Ireland in light of international best practice in this area. So how do we benchmark what we do with others? The outcome of this analysis will help guide and inform consideration of next steps and any policy decisions that I may make in relation to this issue. In parallel with this process, I'm continuing to meet research funders, researchers, higher education institutions and other stakeholders to explore the potential for improvement. So my department, at my request, and indeed somewhat your request because you've raised this before, are currently collating the information. We will send it to the National Advisory Group, who will advise on any further actions that need to be taken, and will benchmark it against international best practice.
I do welcome that, Minister, and I thank you for that. And indeed, I welcome the announcement of the additional investment from the Irish Research Council. The postgraduate stipend increased from 16,000 to 18,500 per annum, and funding for its postdoctoral researchers also increased. However, the 18,500 is still below the minimum wage. Irish Research Council does not mean all PhD researchers, and apprentices get contracts of employment and are members of unions. They get paid a percentage share of a fully qualified tradesperson that increases each year as they gain experience, and I think we have something to learn from that. The PhD researchers, however, have no contract of employment, no collective bargaining rights, no sick leave, no maternity leave, or no paternity pay, and I would ask that you would take all of those things into consideration in your review. Low-paid, precarious work has spread rapidly in higher education since Fine Gael came into power in 2011, and that's not Sinn Féin's fault. Thank you.
So you got me back from my comments on the last question, but I will say in relation to the issue of precarious employment, Deputy Conway-Walsh, I was addressing the Irish Federation of University Teachers annual conference virtually last week, and I did specifically highlight how we intend to address precarious employment as part of our discussion in relation to sustainable funding. As we invest more and more in higher education, and it is an investment, it's only right and proper that this state expects more and more in terms of decent employment contracts being issued. And I think that is a fair point. In relation to the actions I'm going to take in this regard, and I will very much feed in the suggestions that the Deputy has made to that process, we will now have the additional information that's been collected from the HEI, so we have a full picture of what's happening, because we've heard, and I don't mean this in a dismissive way, we've heard individual examples and anecdotes, and they're important. It's important we map out and have a good picture of everything that's happening. A subgroup of the National Advisory Forum will consider, will analyse, will internationally benchmark, will report back to me, and I'd be very happy to share the findings with you and act constructively engage with you on them. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Minister, because the situation with precarious working conditions for those working within third-level institutions is not acceptable on two fronts. Firstly, because of the economic disadvantages, putting people out of the stress, the financial stress, but also the message that it's giving to our students that it's okay to work in an environment where you're treated like that. We have to stop it. And I would ask you in the review as well, Minister, if you could put researchers, PhD students with disabilities front and centre of that. Can you please consult with them, make sure that their voices are heard within that, because there are extra challenges there for those students, the PhD researchers with disabilities. They have an enormous contribution to make. We have to enable them to make that contribution, and we have to ensure that their rights are upheld within that. Thank you.
Certainly will, Deputy. I agree with you fully on that. I've had some engagement already with PhD researchers with disabilities, and I'd be very happy to intensify that and do more. I thank you for acknowledging the fact that we have increased the stipend. That is a signal of intent in terms of wanting to do more in relation to research, and to do more in relation to research, you've got to have researchers, and it's got to be an attractive, decent place for researchers to carry out their work. We've also increased SUSI supports for postgraduate students as well, and this is the general direction of travel that we want to take. But I'm genuinely eager to see the outcome of the subgroup's work. Because I do accept that there's more that needs to be done in this area. I do also accept that it's a fine line between fulfilling the educational importance of these programs and the differentiation between education and work. But at the same time, I think we should be striving to be best in class in this area. We want Ireland to be a leader in relation to research that does involve investing in our best and our brightest. And any recommendations that suggest how we can make further improvements will certainly be acted upon and taken very seriously by me.